All right. Great way to open. Hell yeah.
Great note to start on. Hell yeah.
So, this is the Professional Nerds Podcast, where silly shit is serious business. I'm Ryan. I do comics, anime. I do the scholarly type stuff. How about you guys?
I'm Van. I just grew up being a nerd, and I'm into data research, stuff like that. And I'm here to ask the normal person questions.
And to supply any numbers stuff that makes me break out in hives.
And I'm Gabe, and I do my best.
That's
Don't
really
we all?
we can say. Actually, I don't. I give maybe 70% at most. Try to lower expectations.
I think we got a good trifecta. So we got like the academics, the philosophy, and then just everyone else.
Yeah. We also got numbers type stuff for Van, numbers, computers. I do literature type stuff. Gabe does arts and dance.
And hard sciences.
And hard sciences. I forgot about the medicine.
You don't have to boost my ego. I know I do the normal questions, but I know I'm not stupid.
Yeah. I am just way overeducated.
I don't ask the normal questions, but jury's out on the stupid. Figure that one out.
All right. So today we are talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, since I teach about comics. I love comics. I'm kind of in the Grant Morrison camp of like, if you don't know Grant Morrison, they are a comics writer. They are absolutely in love with the Silver Age. And they're the ones who wrote All-Star Superman, like the one of the best Supermen ever, right up there with My Adventures. And Grant Morrison believes Grant Morrison is a practicing wizard in a standing wizard's feud with Alan Moore, another comics author who practices a different type of witchcraft because comics is fucking weird. But Alan Moore basically worships superheroes like as gods. And I'm right up there with him. And with that in mind, I think superheroes and comics in general and nerdy shit should be for everybody. Open to everyone and should represent everybody. So we are talking today because it's shown up a lot in the news. It's shown up a lot in recent comics. It's in politics too. We're talking about diversity in comics and whether or not it's a good thing. And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Podcast over.
Yeah. A nice, unbiased, fair and balanced view.
100%.
100%.
We have every possible configuration of valid opinion in the room.
Yep.
Here to talk
That is
about.
100% accurate, yes.
And I'm legit not interested in anyone trying to refute that.
Yeah, if you want to say something in the comments, cordially go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to say something disagreeing, that is.
Yeah. No. If you disagree about diversity, you can go claim being racist somewhere else. We don't need that in comics sessions.
Qualified discussions of nuance, that's fine. We welcome it. But if you are anti-diversity, fuck off.
On this subject, I do not.
I totally will. You should put the comments right up there.
You're just wrong.
Just be as deeply racist as you really want to be, and just leave it right there in the log where we can find it.
I was thinking in terms of I agree with diversity is good, but how do we enact it with this particular character? We can have a discussion about that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
There is room for nuanced opinion. You can agree that diversity is good, but I don't like the specific way they're executing it here.
Yeah,
and I think
there are definitely ways to do diversity where you've done it in a poor way.
Yeah, and God knows we've seen a lot of that.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
For instance.
Also, hang on. I want one more caveat for the beginning of this conversation.
Go ahead.
There are certain levels at which people will say, if you oppose X character in X movie or whatever, that makes you fully bigoted and whatever. And I'm sorry, but there's different levels of story writing and performing, and you can hate how they put a character into a movie in a way that has nothing to do with them representing who they represent. Yeah. If you traded them out for a person who represented the same whatever communities that person represented, but they did a better job, I would be cool with that character. Like, see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so for instance, the example I was thinking of earlier was Heimdall in the Thor movies, and people bitching about, like, Heimdall can't be black? Fuck you. He's a Norse god, he can be whatever color he wants. But he's Heimdall the White. In reference to purity, again, fuck you. But you could argue that, like, I don't think Idris Elba was a good Heimdall. It should have been, I don't know, in Don Cheadle, Will Smith, somebody else.
Don Cheadle?
Don Cheadle is not a great
No!
It just
hold on. I love you, Don Cheadle, but not as
Heimdall, no.
Not as Heimdall.
But you get the idea. You know, it should have been this other actor who is also black, or maybe I don't know, a Latino actor or something like that.
Yeah,
that is okay. I'm cool with that. Yeah. But the basic premise of he has to be white, no, screw you.
Heimdall the White.
Yeah, well, that's what he's called in Norse mythology.
No, it's just really funny to me that people thought the white thing meant that Heimdall had to be white. And Idris Elba is a fucking national treasure. I love his voice. That's it.
I don't think they actually thought that it meant he had to be white. I think they were just being racist and were using that as an excuse. Like, anybody understood that he was white in reference to, like, pure character, which is didn't start as a problematic phrase. I understand what they were going for, but has since been co-opted by some fucked up people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, the swastika was a Tibetan Buddhist symbol before the Nazis ever got a hold of it.
Fuck you, Hitler. Hitler was wrong about everything, literally. Aryans are brown people. Aryans are Persian and Indian. Also, the blue-eyed, blonde-haired shit, it was a fucking lion. That's what Nietzsche was talking about. A lion's mane, not a anger.
Angry noises.
Yes. Sorry. Anyway. So yeah, that was my whole thing. Like, oh, Heimdall has to be white. Fuck you. Idris Elba could just walk up to me on the street and say, "I'm a Norse god." Like, yes, you are, sir. Whatever you say, sir.
Yes, Daddy.
Thank you, man. Have another.
It's kind of like the not Robert Rodriguez. Who's the guy who plays Machete?
Oh, Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah.
There was at the end of the movie, he like goes undercover, and somebody was talking like, "How the fuck is he going undercover? Everybody knows who he is." And yeah, Danny Trejo walks up to you and says, "I'm undercover. You don't know who I am." You say, "Yes, sir," and you shut the fuck up. Like it's just the intimidation instead of stealth thing.
My, what a weird sound that wind was making just now.
Yeah.
Glad I don't have to think about that ever again.
Yeah. Be real horrible if that man ever showed up in town. Fortunately, he's not here because I don't see him.
Yep. Never seen him in my life.
So yeah, in case it's not abundantly clear, we take a pretty strong stance on diversity good.
Yes.
So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about some of the cool things that are happening in comics and have been happening with that diversity and some of the mistakes because comics has a bad history. Most comics aren't intentionally racist, I should say, but they started in the 40s and 50s, and we are the reason we can't have nice things.
Yeah, they're any piece of art is a reflection of the time it was created in.
Give you an example. Hal Jordan's assistant, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern from the 60s, the Silver Age one that everybody knows, had the ring, the alien ring, that first one. Ryan Reynolds played him in the terrible, terrible movie. His assistant at the airfield was an Eskimo mechanic named Moon Pie.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Please go on.
And to be fair, the several jokes were made, just repeated jokes about like him being not even shifty or unintelligent, but he talked in like a broken English dialect, and it was a racial caricature. And to be fair, in its credit, he was never anything less than a hero. He was never mocked or made fun of for being inherently inferior, but his race was the subject of jokes. Similar character in The Spirit, which you probably don't know, but it's Will Eisner's comic. The Eisner Award in comics is named after him. He was one of the first ones to say comics are art. And The Spirit is a character who's like a detective who got beaten up and left for dead, and then everybody thinks he's dead, but he survived, and now lives in a cemetery and pretends to be a masked crime fighter because basically he can operate where the cops can't. And the mayor, or the chief of detectives, knows who he is and knows his secret, but lets him get away with it. It was kind of very similar to early Batman and early kind of comics like that, but a lot more lighthearted. his assistant, and I need to pull up an image for you two. I will put up an image on the thing. His assistant is named Ebony White.
Ebony White.
Yeah. And you can guess what he looks like, but I'm going to show you.
I'm going to guess white and black.
Not quite.
Black.
Yeah.
Oh
no.
Oh,
that's so much worse than I thought.
Yeah. And
wow.
he is a fucking caricature, and I know that is an apt description, but it does not make me feel comfortable saying it. I have a couple of spirit books, because again,
it's so bad.
Yeah, it's real bad.
And he talks, and I apologize in advance, but I am accurately representing. He talked like this, massa. Sure enough,
God.
it hurts to read. He is superstitious. He's ignorant, like, oh, lordy lord, them haints and such like. And it's hard, it's painful to read. But at the same time, he is a valuable assistant. He is a heroic character in that, like, he solves crimes on himself. He is noble. He is virtuous. So it's, he's never, and as far as the, being the cartoonish buffoon, he's on the same level as the chief of police. They're both the butt of jokes and, shown as being foolish and silly compared to the hero. But he is on an equal level. And I am not trying to excuse it. I am not saying it's okay. What I am saying is this was an attempt at the time to be open and to be, say, like, this is a good character.
To be more inclusive.
Yeah, it was a feeble attempt, but it was a baby step in the right direction. So comics, when I say it has a problematic history, most of the comics weren't intentionally racist, but they were super racist. It wasn't saying black people are bad and inferior, but oh God, is it racist. And we need to call it out for that. We need to acknowledge that, no, this was fucked up and not okay. But I think we also need to acknowledge they were trying, in their horrible way, to be positive. And I will say, I looked up some of the images in modern imprints of the Spirit. Ebony White looks like an actual just character. Like he's just a black guy.
That is way better.
Yeah, again, I will show an image. But it's...
That is way better.
God, that is so bad.
Always a good podcast when I can cause you to physical pain.
Yeah.
And even the good attempts, like, say, Luke Cage was a pretty good one. John Stewart, a little less so. John Stewart, another Green Lantern. And if, like us, you grew up on the Justice League cartoon, that's the one you know. And in Justice League, he's amazing. He is so much better than Hal Jordan ever was. He's very stoic, but he's a badass. And voiced, I think, by Phil Lamar, who is awesome. But in the comics, he started in the 70s as the angry black man. Of like, I'm not going to wear a mask, I'm going to show my face with pride, screw you, honky. And like, just talking street jive, not nearly to the extent of Ebony White, but talking a very jive dialect and always mad at white people and always mad at the Owens because they're, blue white people. And it's, they're the blue space cops. And it's,
Yep.
they're for those who don't know, the Owens are the ones who created the Guardian Rings. So that's what I meant. And it's basically...
But I didn't ask that question.
Then Green Lantern is one of his favorite heroes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Falling down on the job, man.
Yep.
But it was a black character, and they meant it to be a progressive character to like, hey, we have black readers, maybe we should show black heroes and acknowledge that. But it was written by white guys and drawn by white guys. Even Luke Cage, which was substantially better, the only black guy involved was the colorist. What?
The only black guy involved was the one who's in charge of putting color into things.
Yeah. And and I'm sure he was part of the creative process. He talks about being part of it and being proud to work on Luke Cage.
Yeah, it was that sentence is fucking funny.
Yeah, it was. I acknowledge. I heard it when I said it. Like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. But yeah, it's really fucked up that, and I wrote a chapter in my book. I have a book coming out. Buy my book. It's cool. It's about comics. It's well written and kind of funny. In my book, I mentioned that Luke Cage is an advancement in the characters. He's a very important first, and Marvel was really good in the 60s and 70s about writing, not just like Black Panther, Luke Cage, but also showing like, hey, there's black people just walking around the streets of New York. Because it's set in New York, and up until then, New York was real white. And if you've ever been to New York, it is not.
That is incorrect
I've only been once, and I picked up on, hey, not a lot of honkies. Or actually quite a lot of honkies, but a fuck ton of everybody else.
Yep.
Which is great.
people.
Yeah, so many people.
So many people.
I could never live there. I get claustrophobic, and I don't like crowds. Nothing against New York. I grew up with a yard, and
I grew up with personal space.
I grew up with personal space.
Personal space.
I grew up, and listen, I've been to New York many times. I have family in New York. I love the city. It's a beautiful place. Like, cultural, awesome. Food, amazing. Like, all of that is true. And I want you New Yorkers, I want you to imagine that if you were just having a conversation with someone, that you actually had like 3 to 6 feet in between you and that person where there were no other people. Like, you could stretch out, you could move, you can like take a full deep breath and you won't run into anyone. And you don't know how those people smell because you're too far away for that. Imagine it. Imagine it.
One day, paradise can be yours. Yeah, I don't. I want to make it clear we are not talking shit about New York because those people will come for you.
No, like I said,
it's a incredible place, but
and the people are amazing. They are.
It is. The island is smaller than a terminal at DFW Airport. Like our local airport is bigger than your entire island, and it's. I'm not boasting.
And do you have a population bigger than our whole state?
Yeah,
in that space, like
it seems like suboptimal management. That's all I'm saying.
Or incredible management, and just y'all don't understand how awesome personal space is. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Personal space is great, but also
wonderful.
Their grid system for the traffic and stuff. Chef's kiss.
Oh yeah,
that makes me happy. A place in my brain that like
we live. Probably don't want to say specifically where we live, but we live in a town where they do not have public transport. Like, they have it, but it sucks.
Yeah.
And you have to have a car to get around. And I've lived once or twice in cities like Beijing or visited places that had public transit, and it's really nice.
I mean, Portland, when I visited Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, I lived in Portland for years, and their public transit's amazing.
It was super easy.
Yeah. Lots of nice things to say about New York. Public space, or personal space, unfortunately, I think objectively you must admit, not one of the things you have. But many other lovely qualities. But anyway, so yeah, showing actual black people in New York just on the street, even before they had black heroes, was a big step, and a big important step. Because even if it's white people writing the comic, even if it's not to the extent of Ebony White, but like Jon Stewart or Luke Cage, even if it's not fully representative, it matters to be able to see yourself as the hero. A lot of people wrote about that when Into the Spider-Verse came out. Another fantastic movie. I cannot wait for the third one if they finally get their shit together and make it. But it's all about diversity and the idea that anyone can wear the mask. Literally, it's a pig, a Japanese girl, a white woman who is probably trans by the second movie, which is really cool. A black guy. The 2 white guys are Noir and Peter B. Parker, and they both kind of suck. Like, they're nice. They're trying, but Peter B. is a schlub. Like, the entire movie is him learning to actually enjoy being Spider-Man again and get out of his own spiral of self-depression. So it's not a white guy being the focus, even though they're part of it. So yeah, a lot of people wrote about what it meant to see a person looking like them put on the mask. So it's a big deal, even if it's not an accurate representation. But now we live in an age where there is representation. There are black people writing comics about black characters, and Latino people about Latino characters, and Asian and queer people, and I had you guys read Batman the World and Joker the World. And what I love about them is it's like 20-ish stories. We didn't do that on a podcast, did we?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. I terrible memory. Mine like a sieve. Too much leafy green herb. But it's so it's 20-ish short stories about Batman. Some of them are, but it's taking place in different countries, and each one is written and drawn by a local from that country. So it's not just Batman visits Poland. It's a Polish person's interpretation of Batman. Either what would it be like if Batman came to visit and, had to deal with a Polish environment, or some of them are like, what if Batman was a Japanese samurai, and just what would Batman look like in Japan? Or one of them is like Turkish Joker, and he's in the 1800s bombing a play in the Ottoman Empire, fighting against a former Ottoman court official knight who's an old man who became Batman. and it's all about Turkish politics and history through the lens of Batman, and it is so cool. I love because again, I think superheroes are mythic figures. They should be for everybody. Everybody should get to play with these awesome characters. Show me what, Superman is the ultimate American immigrant. What does he look like to an Irish guy?
Yeah, no,
Which is Grant Morrison it's Hitman when Superman meets an assassin who talks him out of a depression.
Nice.
Because the assassin thinks Superman is the greatest ever. That's one of my all-time favorite Hitman comic.
No, I love that, and I know my cousin and some of the people that I know are really into the Percy Jackson books.
Yeah.
And he started doing, there's an attached series where people from that culture would write about their gods in the same nature that Percy Jackson does it.
Ooh.
I'm not going to say where my cousin teaches, but I got a free copy of one of the books. I forget which culture it's about, but because it was too diverse,
Yeah.
he didn't get to teach it. But he bought a bunch of books for his students because he was super excited about it, and the kids sounded excited, and they said no. So I got a free copy.
Yep. A, that enrages me. B,
Me
that's
too.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the free copy, and B, that sounds really cool because I never read Percy Jackson. I didn't even know about it until
It didn't come out until we were adults.
Yeah, we were adults when it came out, and
they're young
I
adults.
first saw the movie come out when I was living in China at the time, so I saw the movie show up, but I didn't hear any of the commercials or pop culture buzz about it. So my first response was oh, this is a shitty knockoff of Harry Potter, which is a shitty book series. That's right, I said it. Harry Potter is fucking garbage. Fight me.
I like Harry Potter.
And you're wrong.
That's fine.
Yeah. It's fair to like it. It's just you have to objectively acknowledge it's not well written. It's fun. It's entertaining. Not actually quality. But before I enrage a bunch of millennial Potterheads, I mean, what were we talking about before I put my foot in my mouth?
So we were talking about the world.
Right, Percy
books.
Jackson.
Yeah.
Right, so I saw it and oh, this is a ripoff, and then I started hearing about it and oh, he started it intentionally to represent his son with, I think, dyslexia or ADHD.
I can't remember.
There was some neurodiversity, and so it was a very intentional issue of representation through the lens of Greek mythology, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
As somebody I teach adults now, thank God. But I have taught kids in the past, never again, not with a gun to my head. But I get that, it matters to be able to see yourself in these heroes. And if you can, especially if you have neurodiversity, that doesn't get a lot of representation, especially in the 90s when we were kids, or the 2000s.
Now that you say that, this might be a scary thought, but I didn't know what autism was until way.
Oh, yeah.
I think I might have been in high school or college, which that's
Well, I am autistic,
Yeah.
and I only got diagnosed in the past couple of years, as a lot of adults, high-masking autists get adult diagnoses, but I didn't know what it was. When we were kids and young adults, according to pop culture, autism was Rain Man.
Yeah, we used the R
it was
word.
very, very, whatever the hell. I've only seen clips of the movie. But it was, you can't talk, but you're great at math, and you're functionally pardon me for using a slur like this, but in the clinical sense, you are intellectually retarded. And not as a slur, but like you are developmentally disabled in a way that you cannot function by yourself. You have to be in a home. You can't talk, but you're a whiz at math, and all the numbers make sense. As we got older, autism was either... Well, and the other big example is, I believe, St. Elsewhere. Are you familiar with the Timmy Westfall hypothesis?
No.
So it was something that Dwayne McDuffie, a black comic, remind me to talk about Milestone Comics because they're pretty damn cool.
All right.
He was one of the founders at Milestone and is an awesome guy before he passed away. He was trying to make fun of comics continuity and pointed out that if you look at the show St. Elsewhere, it was a primetime drama about a hospital. In the very last episode, it pulls out, or everybody at the hospital leaves, and it's a big finale moment, and in the last scene, it cuts to a little boy, Timmy Westfall, who was one of the doctor's sons, sitting in a living room in a kind of rundown apartment, and his dad comes in. Except his dad's not the doctor; it's a construction worker, like same actor, but in like laborer gear. And he's, "Oh, bye, son. Have a good day." And Timmy doesn't say anything. And then it pulls back, and it's the hospital where the entire show took place. Is inside a snow globe. Turns out, he's an autistic child who can't communicate, and the entire show happened in his head. The problem with that is, it crossed over with other shows, including things like, I don't know what show it was, but the guy on it was a detective on Law & Order SVU, where his same character that had been on another show got moved over to that one because it was owned by the same company. So that means everything on Law & Order, because it crosses over with that, is all also part of Timmy Westfall's imagination. And so on and so forth. And it turns out like half of television is all inside the mind of this one child. So it was making fun of, comic book continuity and multiverse and canon and all this silly shit. Which, as somebody who loves that silly shit, come on, Dwayne, you're better than that. Rest in peace, but come on, Dwayne. But that was what autism was for our generation. It was either the Rain Man shit or the nonverbal screaming at all things. Nobody can talk to them. What's going on inside their head. It was that shit.
Yeah.
Or, as we got older, it was Asperger's, which is like Sheldon Cooper on Big Bang Theory. And which is not a very positive portrayal. He's a douche. He's the butt of the joke. That's why I hate that show. A, the representation of autism. B, the representation of nerds. Because we're not being celebrated on that show. We're the butt of the joke.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I really enjoyed that show to begin with. As it progressed, though, it did fall off. It stopped being like the nerds were intelligent and stuff like that, and like you said, they were more of the butt of the joke. And they're like, oh, look at these weird socially whatever people being stupid and doing weird things and blah blah blah.
Yeah, look at these weird socially awkward people who have more degrees, make more money, and are generally a greater contribution to society than you. Oh, look at that waitress, isn't she pretty? It's nice how she talks to them. Like, really, God, all of you can do better than Penny. Anyway. But yeah, I was kind of the same way. I liked it at first, like, oh, it's about nerds. And wait a minute, no, it's really not. This is very insulting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for a lot of us, that's what autism was. It was, and that goes back to the point of why representation matters. If you don't see this shit, you don't know about it. When I told my parents about my diagnosis, their first response was, "Oh, you're not autistic." Well, I do this, and that. Oh, at most you're like Sheldon in Big Bang. Like, yeah, he's autistic. Well, and part of it was it used to be Asperger's versus autism. Asperger was a Nazi. Some of it was, he was in Germany and had to be a Nazi, but some of it was he definitely sacrificed kids. And
he did bad shit.
Sent kids to the death camps because they were not even autistic, just they were different, and they didn't want to obey authority. So yeah, pretty terrible person. Don't really want to be associated with him. Yeah, but yeah. It's so again. That's another cool thing that Percy Jackson has. That I really. we're going to do a podcast. We have to do it because if nothing else, I have to talk out my paper before I write it. But I would argue that it's common for autistic people to resonate with characters that are androids or that are non-human. The classic example is Data from Next Generation. Great character, love him, my favorite, hands down. Followed closely by Odo from DS9 and then Spock from Next Gen, because the alien outsider character that doesn't get humanity is a real popular character.
He's half human. Yeah, no.
You mean Spock from
No, Spock
TOS,
from
yeah.
TOS. Yeah, what did I say?
Next Gen?
No, TOS, Sam. My bad. But yeah, Odo is definitely...
I correct you now so they won't correct you online.
You are much kinder about it. But yeah, that I would posit that while that's a good character and you can't tell people who they relate to, a better allegory for autistic people would be mutants. Because it's not that we're not emotional. We are very emotional. It's just often we can't feel middle emotions. You know, we don't feel we don't know how we feel, so we don't feel things until they're at the extreme. So, you know, Data doesn't have temper tantrums or meltdowns or freeze up, but we do. It's not that we're human. Not that we're not human. We're differently human. And frankly, if you listen to the community at all, it'll be go to an autistic meeting, count the seconds until somebody says those fucking neurotypicals. There's a real big Magneto was right energy in the autistic community. It is an angry community. Somebody might want to do something about that.
Well, wait, it's also like, to go back to the point you're talking about, where with the representation and stuff like that, having people who actually have it representing and where like they're taking these diseases and stuff, they made them like caricatures basically of what it is and stereotypes, and that's what people grew up with. As we were talking about with our exposure to autism growing up as a kid in high school was pretty low. I remember watching a movie called The Ringer with Johnny Knoxville, where he's like, I feel like he kind of grew up with the same kind of thought, like, oh, you know, there's special ed, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Like, they need to be treated differently and special because they can't do it, and so they can't compete with us. And all of the special ed, like, athletes kick his ass, and, like, you get, like, an inside kind of look of, like, the culture and stuff. I don't think it did well in the ratings, whatever, but, like, they only acted the way that the stereotypes were when they wanted to get something, but they were actually intelligent and functional people. And, like... so I think representation and stuff, and we were talking about like Percy Jackson and like the creators and stuff representing their own style, their own culture, and like the Batman and Joker book is really good because it's a different perspective versus like a white person's perspective from their point of view, which they don't understand. Yeah,
and again, I do appreciate and acknowledge the initial efforts of like we should have other points of view. Let's write about it.
Yeah,
but guys, let the non-white people write some, huh? The bit, huh?
Let the people who are being depicted write some.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Yeah.
Games Workshop is finally fucking learning that lesson. They have, count them, 2 women who write for them. 2. Each one has got a whole novel. Oh, wow. And I'm doing both of them for the book I'm going to write on because, god damn it, you need some representation. I don't know how, I think they have at least one non-white writer, but he only writes short stories so far. And I only know that based on a name that is clearly not English. Based on names, I have no idea. Everybody else is a British or American English sounding name.
I know the ones that I've seen on interviews and stuff. Like Dan Abnett's definitely a white guy.
Sandy Mitchell's a white guy. Most of them are white guys. I would hope they have...
And to be fair, like especially having recently read through the entire Horus Heresy, this run through of the treatment of Warhammer and of the different cultures from the different planets, like they've done a much better job this time around than the earlier stuff, and like they made it interesting. And
I will say games, and it's hard to say things in Games Workshop's defense. As a company, not the best, but they did do some good with that. I remember a few years ago when this move towards diversity was first starting, somebody started bitching about like, oh, the Ultramarines can't be black, they have Gilliman's gene seed, and then they must be white, and then racism. And Games Workshop as a company more or less said, fuck you. Like, no, they borrow Gilliman's gene seed, they look like Gilliman, they have the same jawline. If they started with black skin, they're gonna end with black skin.
Yeah.
There are two differences, like the Raven Guard turn albino, but that's different. The Salamanders turn charcoal black, but again, that's different. Everybody
But
else...
those are the only two chapters that have a canon. They change their skin color to this. And it's never from something, it's to this.
Yeah, and
whatever
it's-
it was becomes more this-like.
Yeah, and it's always implied that it's just, they had diversity as they start and different, what would be racial features on Earth.
Yeah.
They just all have the same,
Yeah.
artificially charcoal skin and glowing eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So Games Workshop did a good job.
Well,
No, we have
yeah.
diversity. We have, say an ethnic slur around a Talon Raider. See what happens.
Well, and that the whole notion of racism in the Imperium is stupid. Like,
Yeah.
the Imperium is so concerned about living and surviving the next bullshit that's going to happen. If you can stand in that line and hold a gun, welcome to the Guard, my
Yeah.
friend. Like, if you can stand on that assembly line and work in the forges, then welcome to the AdMech. Like, we do not give a shit what is in your pants or the color of your skin. I care that you can do the job that I need you to fucking do right now.
We
Like,
will exterminate subhumans, by which we mean people with the third arm. You have the right number of arms and legs and eyes and such, and you just have a different skin? No. Who said he was subhuman? Execute that idiot. He's going to be a problem.
yeah.
Um,
Less than
no.
2 arms, that's cool. We got a robot arm.
Yeah.
Let's go.
But more than 2, we have an issue.
Yes.
Unless it's a
the
robot.
third one is a robot, then you're
the
okay. Yeah.
third robot arm is cool.
Mm.
But yeah, our problem is classism. That's what 40K is about.
Yes.
No racism. And they did good with Space Marine 2. That
Yeah.
all your squad is different ethnicities, and they don't give a shit. They are all
Yeah,
ultra
it is.
race.
Other than the fact that that's how they did the art, they never mention it. They
Yep.
never bring it up. Nobody talks about it because it's not an issue for them. They
And
don't
the
think
only
about
color
it.
these gentlemen see is ultramarine.
Yeah,
That's all that matters.
yeah,
And gold for the Emperor.
that's right.
But yeah, so I think Games Workshop is one of it's done a good job of increasing representation, but now that's kind of the first step, and that's a first step a lot of companies do make, and then they move on to hey, now that we're writing about them,
Let's do
maybe
it.
we get some people who are like that to
Let's
write
do
about
it
them.
better.
So the 2 women writers, I think, have shown up in the past year or 2. But it's a first step. And one of
Well,
them
and
is
they
writing
do-
about the Sisters of Battle,
Yeah.
which is great.
And they do have. There are some. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I think they have some female writers on the team that works in the. Because
game
no, in the Black Library, the way they're organized is all of the writers are basically form a conference that talks through what the main story arcs and plots are going to be and
Oh,
whatever,
okay.
and then each of them splits off and writes their own books or their own storylines or whatever. But they all have to know what the core big events are that are the standard canon for the overall setting, because none of them can you can't fuck with that too
Yeah.
much, right? You can't be writing stuff about Primaris that doesn't have the Cicatrix Maledictum. It's not going to work out. And I believe that there's a couple women who are on that conference.
That's
At least
cool.
from the videos that I've seen of people
Yeah.
talking about it, I want to say there's a couple ladies in there.
That's good to know. So yeah, I think they're kind of at the stage that comics was, 20, 30 years ago, where they're writing about people but need to get more writers to write about themselves. Comics, as I said, and especially in the last 10 years, especially 10 to 20, has started moving to that stage, which is really cool. And so you get things like today we have Batman the World, Joker the World. Van brought over returned my copy of the new Ultimate X-Men, which is set in Japan and where mutants are just a small subset that, since Xavier and Magneto didn't happen, nobody actually cares about them politically. They're just some mutants. And now a Japanese mutant is trying to start a religious cult, but it's written by a Japanese woman, Peaches Momoko, I believe, which is, I think Momoko means peaches. It's a assumed name. But it's a Japanese person writing about Japan using Japanese cultural touchstones, and it gives a really cool version of what mutants are, and
Yeah, it was really
how
cool.
would the mutant experience happen in this other culture. And I think that's really, really cool. I love that.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
But you also get things it started earlier. One example from about 2005 would be Jaime Reyes, the Blue Beetle, who before that was 2 or 2.5 white guys, including Ted Cord, a white scientist. So, white billionaire businessman supplanted by a Latino youth. Wonder if there's a message there. And then the minute he shows up on Earth, after like some big crossover event where he gets the costume and goes to space and then gets trapped in a time loop for a year and shows up a year later where his family thought he was missing, lands on Earth, wonders like, where the fuck am I? Guy Gardner, the douchebag Green Lantern, who Batman knocked out in one punch, Mal.
Sorry, I can't hold this one in. What punch?
Yeah.
You said to be fair, and then I immediately went to Lita Kenny, and I was like, to be fair. But I held it in, but it came out now. Anyway, back to you.
Nathan Fillion is going to play him in the movie.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Blue Beetle?
Yeah.
Oh, no, Guy
Gardner.
Yeah.
But anyway, Blue Beetle lands on Earth, and Guy Gardner immediately shows up and starts trying to fucking murder him. And it is like... Then finds out a few minutes... basically, it's because the Owens, the guys who made the ring, and the Reach, the guys who made the suit, the Scarab, Owens were the first race in the galaxy, or the universe, the Reach were the second. And they've been in competition ever since, and have like big fancy treaties about which worlds they have, and basically they are at a state of permanent Cold War.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It wasn't a thing until 2005. If you watched the Young Justice series, it's season 2 is all that arc, and they do a really good job of it. Guy Gardner attacks him because the Ring basically said, "Fuck this guy up," and didn't give him anything else. And then as he realizes, oh shit, it's a teenager, and he stops. But yes,
Wow.
an abusive white space cop attacks a Latino kid for being the wrong color. I think they did a pretty good job of representation in that comic. I think that one was pretty spot on. and again, for being the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood. What are you doing on my Earth? Yeah.
You're a little too blue for this neighborhood, boy.
Basically, yeah. 100%. It was... That's what it was.
We only wear green bullshit technology around here.
Yeah. So I think, and I don't know how much of the team involved was Latino. I know some of them were. I could go and look, but it was like it's like a 20, 30 person team, because it's one of those where they have different artists rotating in. So it's one of those things that I hate to cite, because I have to list all the names. Like I have a 10-line citation. But yeah, it's very good at representation, and there's some really cool stuff they do with it, and I like that.
Nice.
Any thoughts that y'all want to have? Because we are getting close to 45 minutes. This is a longer one. That's okay.
I hope that the diversity keeps going. That's really my only comments. With everything going on, I just still that I hope they keep doing that, and I love seeing it from the perspective from the other person. I mean, just kind of the deal with like TikTok and whatnot going on now, where we're getting like censored from the outside world.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Chinese Great Firewall. So like following World Talk and stuff like that on TikTok allowed me to like see more into it and seeing their perspective and stuff. It's good, and everyone needs it.
Yeah.
And it gives you more fucking empathy.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Well, and just it's always more advantageous to have more ideas from different directions in one place, because it allows you to then mix those things, which a lot of our favorite technologies and advances of humankind have happened when somebody in one place had an idea that got taken up by somebody else and they ran with it.
Yeah. So I think we're probably in agreement. There's one thing I wanted to close on, and I wanted to save it to the end because potential spoilers ahoy. So there's a bit in X-Men 97. If you haven't seen it, stop this and go watch it. It's honestly, it's better than our podcast. I think we're comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
It's real good.
It's fucking amazing. It makes Cyclops cool.
Yeah.
Which is, I grew up with the X-Men cartoon. I applauded when they killed Cyclops in the X-Men movie. Like, that was for everybody who grew up hating his ass like me. I actually like Cyclops now. Not a lot, but I do like him because of that.
Yeah,
But,
no, I agree. And you're talking about the movie with where Phoenix just straight up
Yeah.
murks him at the beginning of the movie.
Because James Marsden didn't want to do the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
and
was
that
great.
was the one saving grace of that movie, and it was for everybody who grew up on the cartoon.
Yeah.
But so slight spoiler for the last episode of X-Men '97. If you don't want that, turn off now. Thanks for listening. And it's not a plot spoiler. But at some point in the last episode, Wolverine gets fucked up real good. And he's in sickbay on the Blackbird, and Morph is sitting with him, at the bedside, and he's doing the thing where you're talking to the person as the EKG machine, being, come back to us, we need you, you're my best friend. And then Morph does a thing. Morph, and I love that they refer to Morph as they throughout the X-Men '97, because they didn't end the '90s, and it was the '90s. I can understand not being as up to date on things, but yeah, if you're a shapeshifter, gender stops meaning anything. I am only male because I choose to be at this moment. That is the literal definition of gender fluid. So they're sitting there in the sick bay, and Morph is talking to Wolverine and begging him to come back and get better and not die. And he turns into Jean and says, "Come back to me, Logan. I love you." And I freaked the fuck out, because there's two ways you can take that. It's either he's telling his best friend what Logan needs to hear to pull him back, which, okay, boring, but okay. Or Morph is confessing his love for his best friend in the only way that Logan will acknowledge. And my first thought was, yes, gay it the fuck up. Because let's be honest, and I've got to think about it, why did I have that reaction other than A, diversity is awesome and I want to see ooh. B, Wolverine has officially been, since the last several years, in a throuple with Scott and Jean. And it's a pretty happy one, and it's hinted at pretty heavily that it's not a 2-on-1 on Jean every time. So, they make Scotty says something about, ooh, we're going to see Jeannie in a bikini. How about Scotty in a Speedo? Ooh. And I'm like, oh shit. Hey, 200-year-old man probably has experimented once or twice.
Yeah.
But X-Men, at its core, is a soap opera. It's not about, most of the comics don't have much fighting in them. It's all about drama and emotion and big emotion of we are so betrayed, but humanity hates us, but we must save them. But I love this person, but I hate them. It's huge melodramatic emotions, and you can milk the best friend in love with his gay man in love with his best friend who's straight. That is just oodles of drama. And again, I don't even care where Wolverine ends up. He should date Morph. But I don't care where he ends up, because just the drama of it, that's what X-Men is all about. Yes, put these characters through the emotional ringer, kick their heart in the dick. That's what it's all about. So I think that there is a lot of promise going forward for the future of superheroes to be a lot better than they have been, and to really make diversity cool and mean something. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Any other
well,
thoughts?
to be more of a sharing of ideas
Yeah.
and perspectives. But yeah.
All right. So if you don't like diversity, fuck off.
Yeah.
The end.